fiscal deficits and public debt have soared in recent years, but consolidation efforts are underway in many countries. The recent update of the IMF's Fiscal Monitor takes a fresh look at the latest developments around the world. In a number of euro area countries, market pressures have intensified. Sovereign bond yields surged to unprecedented levels before moderating somewhat in recent weeks. Markets remain unsettled. Concerns include doubts about whether public finances are sustainable and uncertainty about liquidity in the euro area. But fiscal deficits are in fact falling in many countries. In the euro area, deficits dropped by 2 percentage points of GDP in 2011. In the United States, it fell by 1% of GDP. Only in Japan did the fiscal deficit widen, in part because of reconstruction costs related to the earthquake and tsunami. Relatively solid growth helped push down deficits in the United States and parts of Europe, but policies were tightened too. For most advanced economies, substantial additional fiscal consolidation is planned for 2012. By contrast, in some emerging economies in Japan, deficits are projected to stay broadly unchanged.
I think fiscal policy has to walk a fairly narrow path. Not enough fiscal adjustment would be bad, but too much fiscal adjustment would also be bad. Not enough adjustment would be bad because markets are concerned about fiscal sustainability. So if they get too worried that you may end up with a fiscal crisis, which would be bad for growth. Too much adjustment, however, would also be bad for growth. If you tighten fiscal policy too much, there will be not enough consumption, not enough investment, and growth would decline. Too much fiscal adjustment may even be bad for the perception of fiscal sustainability, because markets are very worried about the effects that insufficient growth may have on the fiscal accounts. So fiscal policy must be just right. We said this in the past. In this fiscal monitor, we emphasize more than on other occasions the risk of over-tightening, because this risk seems at present to be more concrete than in the past. But the message has not really changed. Fiscal policy must walk a narrow path between too much adjustment and not enough adjustment. The second point that we underscore is that fiscal policy should not amplify the shocks that may affect the GDP growth. If growth decelerates, countries should let what we call the automatic stabilizers operate. This means that they should let deficit increase temporarily if revenues decelerate. This is, of course, if they have some fiscal room, that is, if they have the possibility of financing the additional deficit at affordable rates. A third thing that fiscal policy should do is to try to broaden the narrow path I mentioned earlier through structural fiscal reforms. This means, first of all, strengthening fiscal institutions to boost the medium-term credibility of fiscal policy. It also means introducing reforms that affect long-term spending trends, for example, in the pension and healthcare area. This is particularly important because these reforms can have very powerful effects on the long-term fiscal sustainability, but they do not typically involve an immediate tightening of fiscal policy. However, the effect of these reforms must be communicated very well and very effectively to markets. Precisely because their effects are not immediately visible, there is a need to make an extra effort to inform markets properly about the effects of these reforms on fiscal sustainability.